This is The Jason Jones Show, powered by Mudhouse Media. Now, here's Jason Jones.
Aloha, everybody, and welcome to The Jason Jones Show. I am your host, Jason Jones, back in the saddle after 3 weeks on the road, 2 weeks since the last episode. And it's been, for me, an intense couple of weeks. I had to go to Hawaii for my dear friend's funeral, and I may do an entire show around my friend and the tragic situation surrounding his death and how it was linked sorrowfully to the COVID shutdowns in Hawaii that were really totalitarian and obnoxious and impacted people living in the state of Hawaii in ways other than, quote unquote, protecting them from COVID. But that's going to be an entire show on its own. And I want to talk to his family first before we do it. And then after Hawaii, I went to Florida. In Florida, I had meetings with partners on a lot of projects, including the school that we're building in Iraq in partnership with the Vulnerable People Project. And I hope you're a supporter of the Vulnerable People Project. You can support us at thegreatcampaign.org. We're really driving now. It's our spring campaign, and we have a matching gift of $12,000. So any gift you give in the next week will be doubled at thegreatcampaign.org. We also love our monthly donors. That helps us plan it and budget. But we had meetings on our school in Iraq, and we're building a school in a Christian community of Iraq. Also had some meetings, pre-production meetings on our latest film that I can't wait to tell you about. But we're keeping our cards close to our chest for now. But today's show, we're interviewing my dear friend, Mallory Quigley, she's the Vice President of Communications for the Susan B. Antony List. The Susan B. Antony List is really one of the most important organizations in the history of our country, not just operating today, but it's one of the most important organizations in the history of our republic. If you agree with me that abortion, like segregation and slavery, because they're brutal denials of our founding principle, those issues will lead to the unraveling of our republic. Well, what Susan B. Antony List does is it works to get pro-life women, especially, elected to Congress, and it's through the leadership of these pro-life elected officials and the laws that they draft that become law, the bills they create to become law. It's why we have the success we're having today. And if you're like me, I really try to stay on top of every pro-life issue, but there's so much going on. I thought we needed a 30,000-foot look out the window, the landscape of the abortion battle raging in the country today, and no better person than Mallory Quigley from SBA List to come on. And so that's what she's going to do for us today. And again, this episode is being brought to you by Movie to Movement, creating a culture of life, love, and beauty through the power of film. Go to movieToMovement.com. Check out our latest film, Divided Hearts of America, starring the great Benjamin Watson. You can download it wherever you watch movies. The Vulnerable People Project. You know our website, thegreatcampaign.org. And listen up. Father's Day is almost here. We have about a week left. I'm expecting an email any day now from MyPillow with some Father's Day specials. I haven't gotten that email yet, but we already have it. 40% off these amazing MyPillow slippers. And it's like a week left in the sale. So if you're looking to get your father the perfect gift for Father's Day, you cannot do better than the MyPillow slippers. And if you go to the website, mypillow.com, click on the Radio Listener Square, and use the code Jones, you get those deep discounts. Not just on the amazing slippers, no, on everything. And if your dad doesn't have MyPillow yet, what are you doing? What are your dads? If he's got a kink in the neck, I blame you. You got to go to mypillow.com, get him the slippers, and get him the pillow. All right? So here we go with the wonderful Mallory Quigley. Jason Jones Show. Aloha, Mallory Quigley, Vice President of Communications for SBA List. welcome to the Jason Jones Show.
Thank you so much, Jason. Good to be with you.
Yeah, you're someone I admire greatly, and I had the privilege of meeting you at the Notre Dame Vita Institute, which I recommend highly to anyone and everyone. So it's a privilege to have you join the show, finally.
Thank you. Yeah, that was a fun summer. You had your whole family out there, and I remember we had a really good time.
Yeah, I started telling all these pro-life leaders that Notre Dame we'll fly you and all your family out there, and and then Notre Dame was
Carter loved that.
And Carter was like, the director of the program was, yeah, we just did that for you. Don't tell that to everybody. So it was, my kids want to go to Notre Dame now because they were really impressed with the ice cream machines.
Gotta love it.
Yeah, they went.
Kids keep everything in perspective.
I should tell them that every college in the world has a serve yourself ice cream cone machine. But,
I love that.
But I wanted to have you on because Susan B. Anthony List, you have this great new ad campaign that you've launched. And even for someone like me who's passionately committed to the life issue, there's been so much going on. The first 100 days of Biden were an abomination. And yet we're having successes in the states. And it may be, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe, and I never believed we would see the overturning of Roe. I didn't think overturning Roe was a necessary condition to ending abortion. I didn't think we'd ever see it. But I believe we may be about 13 months away from seeing the overturning of Roe versus Wade. And so there's so much going on. I thought, who better than Susan B. Anthony List to sort of get us straight and give us a 30,000 foot view of what's going on across the United States.
I'm so excited to talk about those things, that big picture view. What we're witnessing right now is a culmination of a multi-generational, multi-pronged battle with so many different fronts, all coming to a head right in this moment with the court that has just been transformed in the last few years because of the political engagement of the pro-life movement, especially with candidates. And then the statewide, the surge at the level, getting legislators to pass, all kinds of different pro-life legislation. There's so much in litigation right now. The court could have taken up, a myriad of different pro-life bills. There's the disability discrimination abortion ban, trying to end this lethal discrimination against babies who are diagnosed with things like Down syndrome in the womb. There's heartbeat bills. There's the 20-week bans. There's clinic regulations. And that the court took up this Mississippi legislation that's really quite popular. I was just looking at some polling, Jason, and 80% of Americans, and surely this extends to people across the world. We know that it must, because based on what other laws are like worldwide. But 80% of Americans reject abortion for sure beyond the first 3 months of pregnancy. I'm not arguing for abortion early in pregnancy, of course. I'm just saying that there is consensus at this point of 15 weeks. And, the U.S. is just one of 7 countries in the whole world, including China and North Korea, that allows abortion all the way through the moment of birth. So it's just this incredible time that the court's going to reconsider the mess that they got us in 1973 in a single day. Profoundly undemocratic decisions, striking. And to see the movement.
We lost you there we lost your reception for a second. Can you say that one more time?
Oh. Yeah, I was just saying, what a profound moment we're in. That the court's going to reconsider the mess that they put us into in 1973 by reconsidering this viability standard. It's very exciting to think okay, viability has moved 6 weeks since 1973. It used to be around 28 weeks. Now it's 22 weeks, if not before. And just to think about, how unjust that standard is, because it's totally arbitrary based on where you're living, what resources are available, and that all life deserves protection. Anyway, I'm kind of rambling.
No, what I like what you said,
know.
though, is that a lot of people, and I told you before you came on that half of our audience is outside the United States. And a lot of my friends who are even progressive from Europe, well, when they think that we have this like crazy right-wing anti-abortion movement in America, and then when I ask them what their abortion laws are, they assume that that's what ours are as well. And
Exactly.
I think the reason why the pro-life movement is so strong in the United States is because it's so extreme. Our abortion laws are so extreme. And a lot of this legislation, and I credit SBA List for a lot of this success, a lot of this legislation we're seeing in the states is bipartisan or even Democrat-led, which I think a lot of people might find shocking.
Yes, overwhelmingly bipartisan. And in fact, that the Mississippi law, which is instigating this Supreme Court review, was bipartisan in both chambers in the Mississippi legislature. And I do think that that's really important, especially the further you go at the grassroots level, you see how bipartisan the issue is. And you're totally right that our friends and allies and even people we disagree with overseas in other countries, they certainly think that whatever our law is, it must be reasonable, in line with their own, quote unquote, reasonable laws. Of course, we want to see every life protected, but I think we're kind of getting at the futility of polling people on the question of Roe versus Wade, because people don't know what it means. Whatever their surely very reasonable position on abortion may be, that's what they think Roe versus Wade means. They don't realize what an undemocratic, anti-science decision that it was by 7 unelected men, and that the repercussions, the legacy that it's left. More than 50 million lives lost, and states unable to pass laws that reflect the values of the people that live there.
It's really the radical left and the coasts are dictating to everyone everywhere else, right? So even Democrats, where I'm from in Hawaii, there's so many pro-life Democrats. But if you want to run for a higher office, if you want to run for Congress, if you're a state senator, heck, you could have been Speaker of the House in the state. Mm-hmm. And if you want to run for Congress as a Democrat, you have to leave your values, your Hawaii values, at the airport. If you're from Mississippi, if you're from Texas, if you're from so many other states, if you're a Democrat, you have to leave your values, your Texas values, your constituents' values, bow to the powerful special interest that is the abortion industry. And this is happening all across the country. So now what we're seeing with these bills that are being signed by governors, even John Bel Edwards in Louisiana, Democrat, signed really supported pro-life legislation. And, him and I served together in the Army in the same unit at the same time.
Wow. I didn't realize that.
It's amazing to see a wolfhound. And I'm, I am a Republican, full disclosure, but it's great to see a sane Democrat that was served with me in the Army as an infantryman. He was an officer. I was enlisted. And John Bel Edwards, but he signed on to Katrina Jackson, who was a Democrat's bill. And I think that's something SBA listed very early on, which is you look to support people who are pro-life. And now it's, like you said, that the strategy is paying off in all of these bills representing the values of all of these very unique states. Every state is different. And now the Supreme Court has to start looking at these.
Yes. And it's overdue. They are so past overdue in revisiting this issue. In every case that has touched even just a little bit on abortion, Justice Clarence Thomas, God bless this man, he has been writing in his dissent and in his briefs that the court needs to revisit the issue of abortion. And it's not just like all of a sudden this year, 2021, states started passing pro-life laws. This has been a consistent drumbeat since 1973, and in particular in the last 10 years. But in this year alone, I believe we're at 560 pro-life bills that have been introduced at the state level across 48 states, and at least 70 of those have already been signed into law by the governors that you were mentioning. You know, this is their time. And there's bipartisan support. It's people that are just over this pro-abortion culture that we have. And you're right, the stranglehold that Planned Parenthood has on national Democratic Party leadership, certainly, but also Hollywood and just this leftist culture that is so anti-life, and the throwaway culture. You know, it's people, I think, are waking up increasingly and seeing the arbitrary lines that we draw in different places. And they're ready to make a change.
Did you hear about talk about throwaway culture and the stranglehold the abortion industry has in the entertainment industry? Did you hear about the recent revelations with Lady Gaga?
No, I didn't.
So Lady Gaga came out and confessed or shared that when she was 19 years old, her producer raped her, imprisoned her, and then dropped her off pregnant on a street corner. She didn't finish the story, but I think we can figure out the rest of the story. And the two groups that they're going to owe SBA list and the pro-life movement a big debt of gratitude more than anyone when we see full legal protection for the child in the womb. We'll be liberating women from the abortion culture. We'll be defending the child in the womb, but the Democrat Party will be freed from the grips of this really tyrannical special interest that lords money and power over the Democrat Party and also the entertainment industry. I think that when we see we're breaking the back of the abortion industry, and this will liberate creativity and so much young talent in the Democrat Party. And even in the Republican Party, I've been having to battle since the late 80s, early 90s, you know, the forces of the abortion industry constantly trying to grab the levers of power and control in the Republican Party, but they've completely dominated the Democrat Party.
Yes, and you're right. It will be a liberation when the time comes. They have to experience political consequences first. I think, I think there's a few signs of that, which I'll tell you about, but you're right that the Republican Party hasn't always been as pro-life as it is now. I mean, you remember, we've always had really strong pro-life people that are good at really good communicators. Like we were talking earlier about Sam Brownback, you know, Rick Santorum. These guys are just natural pro-life communicators, and they can make the case, and they don't let anything pass them. And
they were fearless. Like they took courage.
Yes.
For Senator Santorum to do what he did, standing up in front of the world with those placards on partial birth abortion. In a way, by God's grace, it doesn't take courage to be pro-life as a Republican today. But it does take courage for people like Katrina Jackson or the great hero Dan Lipinski, who was targeted by the abortion industry and unfortunately lost his seat. And he was the last really true pro-lifer, I think, left in the House. You might say there's some others that are Democrats, but
you're right. I mean, there are some that, you know, show signs of hope here and there, but in terms of, you know, truly deeply held pro-life values, absolutely, Dan Lipinski, his voice is sorely missed. And I was going to say something.
Did I interrupt
Jason,
you?
I forgot.
Yeah,
no.
This is a podcast, and so you're allowed to forget. If this was Fox News, you would not be allowed to forget. But
yeah, no.
So we were talking about courage and how the Republican Party wasn't always as pro-life as. I mean, I will tell you that I was targeted as chairman of the Young Republicans because of my pro-life position. I was seen as obnoxious and as extreme. And I mean, I was an atheist, I was a libertarian, I was a kid, but because I was pro-life in the 90s, this was seen as, wow, he's extreme. I mean, it's something we say, you know, but we don't actually mean, and we say as little as possible. So was it about the Republican Party? Or? Yeah,
about the Republicans, and then I was going to transition into the Democrats, but about there's been just such an immense change in the last 8 to 10 years. I think especially after the 2012 election, when the autopsy came out and it was so tone deaf, really, like saying that had been votes left on the table because the party was too rigid on social issues. I mean, they never campaigned on social issues. You know, Mitt Romney and Paul Ryan, they could have, I think, drawn up so much more enthusiasm for their campaign if they had leaned in to being pro-life. And it wasn't really until Rand Paul, another libertarian guy, who, and he did in the 2013 or 2014, he did what we had been trying to get candidates to do for a long time. He totally turned the script around and said, I'm pro-life and I don't apologize for it. You ought to be asking pro-abortion Democrats why they support abortion in the 9th month of pregnancy when a child can survive outside the womb, because that's what it means today to be quote unquote pro-choice. That is the standard on the Democratic side, is abortion on demand up until the moment of birth, paid for by taxpayers, no limits. And that is the legacy of Roe versus Wade. That's why we're in this situation. And I think when you look at the 2016 election, you look at how Hillary Clinton, she leaned so far in to the abortion issue, Planned Parenthood, NARAL, Emily's List, all these, mega pro-abortion groups having primetime speaking slots at the Democratic National Convention, and she lost. And we know all the amazing pro-life accomplishments that were made, in the ensuing 4 years of the Trump-Pence administration. But then look at the 2020 election. Joe Biden never talked about abortion. His convention was all about what a nice guy he is and his profound decency, as Michelle Obama put it. They didn't talk about abortion. I think at a deep level, this reflects the fact that Democratic Party operatives see how things are changing for them. They see that this is not a winning issue. Pro-abortion groups have been very frustrated with the administration because even though they're doing all the pro-abortion things, getting rid of the Hyde Amendment, getting rid of the Global Protect Life Rule, the Mexico City policy. Can you tell us
what? Can you explain those two? Can you explain what the Hyde Amendment is and then the Mexico City policy?
Yes, long-standing. Well, the Hyde Amendment, long-standing, bipartisan language that gets added to budgets year after year that Joe Biden himself once was a very strong supporter of. There used to be dozens of Democratic legislators in the House of Representatives that voted for the Hyde Amendment and other they're called, quote unquote policy riders, and they've got to be added to these funding bills every year to stop taxpayer funding of abortion at home, to stop it abroad, to protect conscience rights. And actually, as we're talking, this is the day that the Biden-Harris administration budget came out, and they've cut all of that. It's very unpopular. A majority of Americans support those previously bipartisan, very historical amendments that have been added, Hyde and others. The Mexico City policy prevented taxpayer dollars from going to Planned Parenthood, Marie Stopes International, these groups that are engaged in abortion imperialism overseas, pushing abortion on economically disadvantaged nations.
And how is this, Mallory? Now we know Planned Parenthood has confessed. They admit Margaret Sanger was a eugenicist. This is what we knew. Of course we knew. They would deny. They have now acknowledged this. Mm-hmm. And now Biden, dancing to the tune of the abortion industry, is now allowing, with the reversal of the Mexico City policy, our taxpayer dollars to fulfill Margaret Sanger's eugenics dream in Africa, in Central and South America. And this is horrifying. I do a lot of work in those countries. This is horrifying to them.
Right.
They don't want our money coming there paying for abortions. We have clinics that don't have antibiotics, but they're stacked to the shelves with RU-486.
it is despicable. And you're right. I mean, overwhelmingly, these nations are pro-life. They need true, comprehensive medical care, aid that is coming in that is life-saving, that's life-affirming. And like you said, antibiotics, the simple stuff. We don't need to push abortion onto women in other countries who want to keep their children, sustain and grow their families. It's the most. You're right. It's Margaret Sanger. It is her dream come true.
And those dangerous those manual vacuum aspiration machines for women to perform self-induced abortions, unbelievably dangerous. It's what we would call here a back alley abortion. Now, thanks to the Biden administration, being funded by our taxpayers. But like you said, they're smart enough now not to bang a gong and say, hey, guys, look what we're doing. They now know this is a losing issue for them.
They do. I think that's why they're being so quiet about it. There was an experiment ongoing in the West African nation, I believe Cote d'Ivoire, where they were testing out using the chemical abortion pill in the second and third trimester of pregnancy. And it's just terrible. The quick response time for EMTs, they don't have the same capabilities as we do here, and they're literally using these women. It's so dangerous, not only taking the life of the unborn child, but experimenting on these women with these dangerous chemical abortion drugs. It's just sickening. And you don't hear AOC talking about this. You don't hear Vice President Harris talking about this. In large part, I think that's because they know that this is a losing issue. The more they talk about it, they're going to, they'll face political consequences. And Susan B. Anthony, like our mission, this is why we focus so heavily in politics and elections, because you got to get the right people in office first before you can pass the right kinds of laws. And we want there to be political blowback for people who espouse these extreme pro-abortion policies. I mean, I do think it's very notable that in 2020, Joe Biden did not run on a pro-abortion platform. He was real quiet about it, patted the group on the head. But they've been frustrated with him since January for just not speaking out more on the issue.
That's something. So, I mean, their morale you don't want to be the person they're embarrassed of. You don't want to be the special interest that they're embarrassed of, because it's only a few more steps before they throw you away. So the abortion industry is probably very uncomfortable now with its relationship with the Democrat Party. Even though they're getting what they want because they're paying for it. It's because the pro-life movement, I say this and it's true, and if you're not in the movement, you may not understand this or see it, but it is the largest social movement in the history of the world. There has never been a social movement larger than the pro-life movement in the world ever. And it is now, maybe it always has been, because of social media, the media wouldn't let us see this truth. It is really the most diverse social movement in the world, across ethnicity, across religion, it doesn't matter. And there are so many leaders and tribes of the left that are now coming out as pro-life. In fact, did you hear that the woman that designed that hat, I don't know what to call it, that pink hat that they would wear at the women's marches?
Oh, I can't say it.
Yeah, don't say it. She's pro-life. The woman that designed that hat is pro-life. Now, that's just amazing to me. But of course, they would never allow her to express her beliefs at one of those marches where they're all wearing her hat.
Oh my gosh.
It's turning out that so many of these leaders, people like Maya Angelou, who is pro-life, right, in the world, was never allowed to hear that. But there's so many people and so many tribes and so many segments of the American political community, so many various interests, so many leaders are pro-life. And I think that's why the Democrat Party is becoming more and more cautious, not because they're worried about alienating traditional conservative voters, but they're afraid of alienating their own core support.
I think that's so spot on. And on the flip side of that is, sometimes we'll talk to these Republican campaign managers who perhaps are not as strongly motivated by the issue as their candidate. They're working for a pro-life guy, and like they're talking to us, and they're like, so okay, if we do this, which group of people is that going to move? Like the evangelicals, Hispanics, Black Americans, women in the suburbs. And I'm like, all of the above. This isn't just, not only is this the morally right position to take, which is why the movement continues to grow. As you said, it's the largest movement the world has ever seen, but it is politically smart. And that, those two things have a symbiotic, I think, effect on each other, growing the political power along with the, bringing more and more people on as they get to the heart of the issue and say, okay, this is about the most vulnerable a person can be in their life, a tiny unborn baby, like we've all been there. If you think about it, like we were all there at one point. So we should all be able to relate to this vulnerability of these precious children. So it's the most amazing movement. I feel so blessed to be a part of it, and I'm thankful for God for putting this on my heart, and that I get to. How did
you get, what was the inciting incident that brought you into the pro-life movement?
Well, I'm a cradle Catholic, and I was always sort of pro-life growing up. But when I got to college, I remember my freshman year in a dorm, we're just staying up late, debating things and, watching movies. And we somehow came up to talk about abortion. And my friend, I was like, well, I'm pro-life, and my friend was like, yeah, but would you really stand in front of an abortion clinic and like tell a woman not to get an abortion? And I like hesitated in that moment. I did. And I wish I could say like, absolutely, I would, but I hesitated, and I went back to my room that night, and I was thinking about it, and I happened to pick up I was in a introduction to political philosophy class, and we read that semester, and we read First Things by Professor Hadley Archie.
Do you know that book is what led me from being an atheist to a Catholic?
Are you serious?
I have it here. Hadley wrote me he is like the treasure of the pro-life movement that we have not exploited enough. First Things, let me tell you, I was an Ayn Rand objectivist, forgive me, pro-life atheist. I don't know how I came across First Things, the book, not the magazine, by Hadley Archie.
Yeah.
And I had been, Sartre, Nietzsche, and Freud had been making it more challenging for me to advance this vision of the human person as having this dignity, this inviolable dignity. And so I was searching, but I had an anti-Christian prejudice, I was an atheist, and I didn't want to look towards revealed religions for a source of human dignity. I wanted reason alone. And I somehow came across that book. And it's funny, every time I go to the University of Hawaii library, I'll go grab that book and see how many people have read it since me, and like none. This is really sad. But yeah, I've checked it out like 3 times since I was a student just to bring it home and hold it. So that's amazing. So where did you go to school that you were reading Hadley Archie? Fordham?
So I was at Loyola University in Baltimore, Maryland, which is a nominally Catholic school. I had an amazing professor, Diana Schaub, who is a friend of Professor Archie's. And it's so crazy because it just like, when I picked up the book and I had to read it for the class, we were going through like a chapter a week, and it just totally sneak attacks you. You don't realize when you're reading it, when you set out to read it, that it's going to culminate in this argument for the equal protection of the unborn children under the law, and like why abortion is wrong. I did not see it coming at all. Maybe I just was super naive, but that book, it totally changed my outlook. And I'm proud to say that, 4 years later, those same friends who I had been up late that night in the dorm. Well, I don't know if I'm proud of this, but we were playing this silly superlatives game, and they voted me most likely to like be arrested within, a few years after graduation, like because I was this pro-life.
So were you ever arrested yet?
Fanatic.
Have you been arrested? Yeah, well,
no,
you don't work for a
I
fanatical organization. You'll never be arrested. Now, have you ever met Hadley Arkus?
I have, yeah. When I first started working at Susan B. Antony List, a few years after that, he came into the Catholic Church, and there was a fundraiser for the Catholic Information Center at my friend Frank's house, and he was there, and I was like totally starstruck because I just hadn't realized it was a real person. Sometimes you're just like, whoa, it was about the book, and then I just put two and two together. I said, this is the man that wrote the argument that set me on a trajectory like that God intended from the beginning. How amazing it was. So I got all kinds of
I wonder how many, because I would have thought maybe I was the only one that read First Things and was moved by it to really have a complete course correction. I wouldn't have imagined there was anyone else in the world, but I bet there's a lot of people out there that have been changed by Hadley's book. And he has a new book coming out. I have already pre-ordered it, and I can't wait till it comes out because I'm going to use that as an excuse to lure him onto the Jason Jones show.
Oh, good idea.
Right. So I'm excited for his new book. And then what was the first pro-life? It was SBA List the first pro-life organization you worked for?
First and only. Yep.
Well, you guys are professional, and Marjorie's a thug. She's tough.
She's pretty great.
I mean that in the greatest way. She's a thug. That's what you need representing a special interest. And I tell people the problem the pro-life movement has had is that we think of ourselves more than a competing special interest. We think of ourselves as some great and noble holy crusade. Yeah, well, I really just want somebody that's willing to shoulder check other people on Capitol Hill to make sure that our bills become laws, that people running with our values get elected. And that's really practical work. And sometimes when we just think we're fighting this great and noble crusade, that all things work to the good and we're wearing white hats, no. We need people that are willing to do the tough work of campaigns, the tough work on the Hill, the tough work of pushing legislation through. And you guys have been the best at that, I think, with no one even comes close to being your equal.
Jason, I really appreciate that. And I'm going to remember it when I'm, going door to door with our canvassers, taking around like the New York Times, which is always like terrifying thrill to just see how things are going to go. But it's right. It takes all kinds, right? The movement, we need the sisters of life. We need the people that are just praying constantly. We need the pregnancy centers. We need the people at the state level that are fighting for legislation. And we need people getting involved in better elections. It's not, some people might think it's a little bit, getting a little muddy, but yes, we do it because we do it out of love. And I've always admired that about you, that you have kind of seen all aspects of the movement and know kind of, you understand like the need to move the culture and how to engage in these like huge cultural battles and contributing culture with these beautiful films. And I know that you've done your share of political work, and I really admire you, and I'm glad that we were able to talk today.
Well, thank you.
And keep talking.
Well, I still knock on doors, by the way, and it all started for me knocking on doors. I still knock on doors. Tomorrow I'll be speaking at the Texas State Capitol. I still do those types of events. It just is my vocation is become a filmmaker. And if being an auto mechanic would have been a key, I would have learned how to fix cars. And, but I thought that I remember just knocking on doors thinking there's got to be a better way to reach people. Maybe movies that can reach more people, but I still do the knocking on doors. And you said that kind of scary, it's when you knock on someone's door on a Saturday afternoon at 3:00 and the Cubs game is on, they're not always happy about it, right? Even if they agree with you, they're like, the Cubs are on. Yeah, I know the Cubs are on. And then I have a line I use. I say there are two types of sorry I interrupted the game, guy, but there are two types of countries in the world, okay? There are those countries where every 2 years the Cubs game gets interrupted by someone knocking on your door at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. That's one kind of country. Then there's another kind of country where they knock on your door at 3 in the morning right before they kick it down and drag you out and take you somewhere dark. So I'm glad I live in the type of country where your Cubs game gets interrupted on a Saturday afternoon every once in a while by a young person handing out a pro-life flyer.
Amen. Amen.
So I want to wrap this up with the big thing, right? So you've got this ad campaign because, to quote you, you're trying to influence the court of public opinion leading up to this big decision that we're expecting to come down in about June of 2022. That could be the biggest Supreme Court decision ever.
Yeah. I feel we should all of us feel so privileged to be living in this time and understand that if you consider yourself to be pro-life, and we need all hands on deck in this moment for the next year. We've got the court is, the session begins in October. They'll hear oral arguments sometime this year, in the fall, most likely, and then a decision coming in spring or summer of next year. And in the meantime, Satan is going to wage an all-out war on pro-life Americans to try and get them to think that they are alone and think that they're, that they're backwards and old school and unwoke for thinking that, you know what, states should be able to pass laws that protect life, even life that might not be deemed viable at this particular point. Everything is changing. There's been so many incredible advances in medicine and technology that every generation has new opportunities to live better, live healthier, live more active. All generations have been boosted by this, except for one, and that's unborn children. At 15 weeks, these babies, they can smile, they can hear, they can feel pain, and it's still legal in our country to take their lives in a procedure that is very dangerous for their mothers, especially at that point. And so all we want is common ground, common sense protections for these kids. And I really do think that so many people agree with this position. They don't know that there are other people like them. So if you're pro-life, if you think, there's any reason, and if you like what I've been saying, go tell your neighbor about it, because it's so important that the people understand that what's happening at the court and how big it's going to be, because, our ad is going to be a drop in the bucket compared to what is coming from Planned Parenthood and Hollywood and the pro-abortion powers that be, who are just desperate to keep America on the list with China and North Korea in allowing abortion all the way through birth.
The good news is it takes $1,000 of money to lie, to keep up with $1 to tell the truth. So they're going to have a lot more money than us, but it's going to cost them a lot more money because they're spreading lies. And
we have the truth on our side. Yes.
Now can you tell us about the bill that became law that the Supreme Court is hearing?
Yes. So in Mississippi, the Mississippi bill?
Yeah.
Yes. So I believe it was 2 years ago. It's a bipartisan bill that basically top of the list of the findings in the bill, the Mississippi state legislators said, hey, the U.S. is one of 7 countries in the whole world that allows abortion all the way to the moment of birth. We don't like that. We want to be able to protect babies at 15 weeks. when they can smile, when they have fully formed faces, eyebrows, eyelids, when they are sucking their thumb in the womb and are clearly recognizable as a member of the human family. Yes, maybe they are not able to survive outside of the protection of their mother's womb. I mean, few people can. Like, look, there's some kids that are 18, and beyond. I still need my mom sometimes. I'm much older than that. But anyway, they said, we want to stop abortion after 15 weeks in our state. Republicans and Democrats voted overwhelmingly in support of the bill. Governor Tate Reeves signed it, and it was immediately, challenged by one abortion clinic in the state. There's 3 places that do abortions in Mississippi, just one that calls themselves an abortion clinic. That's the Jackson.
The Pink House.
Yes. So that is that's the law, and it was escalated, through the court system, and Mississippi asked the Supreme Court, in appealing to them, they said, we would just like you to consider this. I think they gave them like 2 questions, but the court, after relisting this case over and over and over again, basically kicking the can down the road week after week, they took up one question, and the question is very simple. It's whether whether bans on abortion before viability are always unconstitutional. So they are going to consider this viability question, which is at the very heart of Roe versus Wade. So it's no exaggeration to say.
They would have to lie because they've actually used the language of Roe. They would have to deny Roe to affirm Roe. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, it's totally, yes, that is the viability standard. We have that because of Roe and Planned Parenthood versus Casey, so it totally gets right at the heart of Roe versus Wade. There's just no getting around that. So we'll see. Who knows what the court is going to do? They can do anything. They can say, okay, we're going to a new standard at 15 weeks. They can say 20. They can say for X, Y, and Z cases. They can pretty much do. Your guess is as good as mine. How they're going to get themselves out of this kind of predicament, which Clarence Thomas said it. He's been challenging his colleagues on the court, saying we created a standard that is always going to change, basically. And he, it's incredible to think what they could do. If they
created a standard that that's always changing, that is always at the heart of division in our country, and our country is only becoming more. Every year we're more pro-life than the last year, and it doesn't look like when you even when you probably joined the pro-life movement, it's very different. And I think it makes a lot of pro-lifers uncomfortable. I said, but we want America, we want the pro-life movement to be as diverse as America, 330 million people. And it is that really already. And so now I think now is the time for the court to take this up, to do the right thing. But I commend you guys for thinking ahead to say, you know what, we need to prepare the court of public opinion for what's about to happen.
And, Jason, it's because, like I was saying earlier, that there's going to be this big debate in the court of public opinion. And I think people are intuitively, like you're saying, the pro-life movement is as diverse. We want it to be as diverse as the entire country. And I think the majority of people just intuitively are pro-life, and the movement itself, because it's so diverse and because it's been growing so much, it is just, we're so much better prepared than we were in 1973 to respond to the needs of women and their children and their support systems. The pregnancy center movement of the 70s has grown leaps and bounds. I mean, in Mississippi, there's, what did I say earlier? There's like 3 places that do abortions. There's 31, I believe it is, pro-life pregnancy centers, the majority of which are offering are full-on medicalized healthcare centers for women and their babies, in addition to providing those traditional financial material resources, parenting classes, etc. So in terms of what the situation for mothers who maybe were planning to get an abortion is going to look like, in a world without Roe versus Wade, we're better prepared than ever before to help women who are already increasingly choosing life. I think because of the development in science and ultrasound technology, giving that window into the womb. But the movement's going to be better prepared to serve them.
I'm glad you brought up the pregnancy centers. I often get asked by reporters, because I make films, I hear this from reporters and like crunchy conservatives, or, the type that are embarrassed of the pro-life cause, and they think that we should shush, we should whisper, and then that's how we'll end abortion. If we just are quieter and less embarrassing, then we'll end abortion. And then they think I'm their friend, because they don't know me that well. And they'll say, Jason, I love what you do, like changing culture. And that's the way you're doing it right. Don't you think that we spend way too much time and money on politics in the pro-life movement? And I'd say the truth, which is, no, we don't spend enough time and money on politics, because the truth is, and it's a beautiful thing, but upwards of over 90% of our volunteer hour, I'd say 99% of our volunteer hours, and about over 90% of our money is spent for pro-life pregnancy centers and women's shelters, which is a very, very, very good thing. But we can't, there's this illusion that all we're doing is yapping about politics all day. All we're doing is spending money on politics, when that is the furthest thing from the truth. Most of our volunteer hours and most of our money is going to care for pregnant women and their preborn children. That's just the reality. You look at the thousands of pregnancy centers. Each of those pregnancy centers is spending hundreds and thousands of dollars, millions of dollars in services and care and medical costs and financial aid and support, not to mention the advertising that has to go to the digital marketing campaign so the young women can find them. So really what you're doing at SBA List, it's a very significant and very important part of the movement. But when you look at overall dollars, and you guys spend some significant money on campaigns, but it's still very, very small compared to what we're spending on the care of women and their preborn children. And then tell us about hours. Do you have any statistics on how many hours? I know you guys have a lot of volunteer man hours, door knocking, thousands of people fanning out across. Do you have off the top of your head? I know I didn't tell you I was going to ask this, but I'd like people to know, you guys do a lot of door knocking.
I wish I did. I wish I did. In fact, I'm already on to the next battle. I can't even remember what our final statistics were in terms of homes visited in 2020. I mean, of course, it was less than we anticipated because COVID, we had to get pulled out of the field for a little while for safety reasons. But I mean, the fact that people went back into the field wearing masks in the middle of the 2020 summer heat, I think just shows how motivated people are to share a hopeful message of life and to educate people on this issue. So I wish I did. I'm sorry I don't.
No, it's thousands of hours. I was so excited when Students for Life of America knocked on my door. And they were asking me if I was pro-life and who I was planning on voting for. And I was like, yay, they found my door. But I know that SBA List is at the front line with that. Let's end on this, Mallory. Give us the 3 most exciting things this year we need to look forward to.
This year?
Yeah. The next 12 months. So we've got the
Supreme
Court in 12 months. And so that's one. And then what else do we have? What other bills or bills that have just become laws that people should know about?
I think that obviously looking forward to the Supreme Court, although it's a huge fight. I think people should pay attention to what's happening on chemical abortion, because the FDA is going to most likely seek to extend the COVID rules that they adopted, which basically say they threw the regulations out the window and said you don't need a doctor's visit to get the chemical abortion pill. So states, pay attention if this is in your state. States are trying to preempt this expansion by putting in their own regulations on chemical abortion. So that's not a thing to look forward
to. And this
to.
affects all of us that are parents, because kids take this like
yeah.
candy, right? I mean, they're taking it every time they have unprotected sex, and it's very dangerous when it comes to the morning after pill. And when we look at the statistics on abortions, we really don't even know anymore, because the doses of chemical abortions are just so outrageous. And, of course, it's a very powerful, dangerous drug. I know in my home state of Hawaii, a young girl took it without her parents knowing, and they woke up to find out she bled to death in her sleep. You can Google this. There's cases every day of men spiking the drinks of their wives and girlfriends with this. I remember one case in particular. It was an Indian woman in Wisconsin. Every time she told her husband she was pregnant, she was excited. He said, let's celebrate with a smoothie. He would go buy her a smoothie. She would miscarry. After the fourth time, 3 miscarriages, and he said, hey, let's celebrate with the smoothie. She's like, yeah, okay, thanks. And she took the smoothie to the police station. Turns out that he was lacing it with the morning after pill. So, it's very important that these are very dangerous drugs, that there's protections in place for women. And that's if you're pro-abortion, right? If we're pro-life, we already know we want to protect the child. But if you just care about, if you're like, it's not a life, life doesn't begin for me until, they're 14, whatever. If you care about women, this is really dangerous and quite scary. And the most powerful scene I'm so glad they did it, in the Unplanned movie, was the chemical abortion scene.
I totally agree. I thought that you were going to say that, and it really is one of the most it's the most powerful scene in the movie, and it's just shocking. People don't realize like how violent it is. So that's really important. I think people should be on the lookout for that. And just be on the lookout for discrimination, abortion bans, and those are really picking up. And just share as many stories as you can of kids, grown-ups, people with Down syndrome who are just adding such joy to the lives of people around them. Not just people with Down syndrome, but anybody with a disability who, oftentimes in their vulnerability, I think bring out the best in the people around them. I mean, that's how I feel about little babies, is that they just, like, their very presence makes the people around them, just a little quieter, a little softer, a little bit more gentle. And that's a beautiful thing, this gentleness and kindness. So that's all I got.
Well, that's a lot. So I'm going to put the ad in the link. I know I've seen it on social media. Are you guys planning on putting it on television?
It's on television. Yes, it's on television right now. It's we're on, I think, Bravo and Hallmark. Some, depending on where you are, it's going to be on a lot of the cable news stations. So keep an eye out. And yeah, thanks for sharing that. And I hope that it makes people think. And it's a really I think a quick, thoughtful ad. So send it to anybody that you want to get into a dialogue about abortion with, and just ask them, hey, what do you think about this? It's a really good conversation starter.
Yeah, when it really drops into the rhetoric of today about the importance of science. Well, if science is important, then we have to relook at all of these laws, because our science has progressed in its knowledge. since 1973. And someone like Bernard Nathanson, the founder of NARAL, who became pro-life, honestly went into performing abortions not knowing what he was doing. When he saw the ultrasound, it changed everything. And that was in 1978, I believe. So much has changed since even 1978. But the laws are sort of like grounded in 19th century ideas of human development. And the laws should reflect the truth about the human person. Every human being deserves full legal protection from violence. And thanks to SBA list, I think in our lifetime, we are going to see full legal protection for the child in the womb from the violence of abortion. And so thank you very much. I want them to get on your list too. So what's the website where they can go to get on the list? And I'll put it in the show notes as well.
Awesome. Yes, it's sbalist.org.
All right, Mallory. And I won't bother you about personal stuff that I'm excited about. So I'm glad you shared that stuff with me before we talked. Tell them I said hello.
Thanks,
Okay.
I will.
All right. Aloha. I'm going to sell pillows. Do you have a MyPillow?
I do, actually.
Okay, tell us about it.
I love my MyPillow, and actually the entire Quigley family is so obsessed with their MyPillows that we have those bags to squeeze air out, and when we just are going on trips, like we all have this little travel bag so we can squeeze the air out of the pillow and stuff it in the suitcase and bring it with us. I always make sure to put like a colorful pillowcase on so I don't lose it in a hotel.
That is wise. The colorful pillowcase is very wise. So do you have the mattress top or any other MyPillow products or just the pillow?
Just the pillow. Yeah.
Okay. You have to get the mattress topper. You must.
I'll look into it.
And you got to use the code Jones. You go to mypillow.com. You click on the radio listener square. You do not use Frank. You do not use Metaxas. You do not use those guys. Who cares about those guys? You use the code Jones. Now, when you bought your pillows, did you use a code or did you just not even get the great discounts?
I gotta say that my mom has been on the MyPillow train for a long time, like long before we knew anything about the great Mr. Lindell and before we knew that he was pro-life. So she's been a believer, and she got all her children. She actually, my brother lives in Denver. She ordered a MyPillow to be sent to Denver for when she visits. So she doesn't actually have to travel. Like when she goes to visit my brother and sister-in-law, she has her pillow there. She like spreads them out.
It is so funny because I just did 3 weeks on the road. By the way, had insomnia the whole time. Did not have my MyPillow with me. And I was wondering about that. And I thought, should I be decadent and ship them to where I'm going? And then I was like, I'll lose them. But you said, no, you put on a colorful pillowcase so you don't leave your MyPillow in the hotel the way you leave your phone charger. I know you leave phone chargers, Mallory, in hotels because we all do.
No, sir.
You don't.
No, I'm very, very focused on like, you always just got to do a little sweep back. Don't.
You've never left a phone charger in a hotel?
My mom always tells me to go in and look one more time, and so I do that.
I'm a philanthropist. See, what I do is I travel the world, and I leave chargers in hotels. That's what I do. For the next person to come, I just, and then hopefully they pay it forward, and they leave an umbrella there or something.
Yeah. I like that.
I
like that.
That's what I tell myself. All right, now you got to tell your mom to use the code Jones, and she's got to get the mattress toppers amazing, but this month, this is me being clever with sales. This is like they don't even know I'm selling pillows right now. It sounds like it's the show. You want to make it seem seamless, right? And I'm making it seem they don't even know right now.
To me.
Yeah, they don't even know we're selling pillows, right? But you use the code Jones by clicking the radio listener square, and with the deep discount, you can get the slippers. And this is like a week left on the 40% off on the slippers.
Oh my gosh. That's code Jones?
Code Jones. Can you imagine?
Okay.
I got the first code Jones for MyPillow. It's the greatest accomplishment of my life. It's not Jay Jones, Jason J show. I literally, for Mike Lindell's MyPillow, own the code to the most common name in America.
Fantastic.
And you know me.
I do, and you know what? Like Father's Day gift.
It's gonna be Father's Day.
Yeah. Okay, I'm thinking about this for my dad for some slippers or something.
Oh, you got the slippers are amazing.
The pillow top.
And the mattress topper. Now, the mattress topper is quite steep. Even with the deep discounts, it's quite an investment, but it's amazing and worth it.
All right, I'll consider it.
Consider it. You have to consider it, but the slippers, you got to go with the slippers. All right, Mallory, I'm going to press mute so when you beep off, they don't hear it. And I'm a big fan of your organization and everyone who works there. And by the way, you know this. We shot a lot of our movie, Divided Hearts of America, in your office.
Yes, we did. That's right.
Disrupted a work day. We disrupted a whole day of work.
Anytime. Thank you so much, Jason. And
our biggest movie yet is coming out June of 2022. I can't wait to tell you about it.
Can't wait to hear it. Thank you so much.
All right. Aloha. Thank you.
Aloha. Bye.
All right, guys. I think I didn't hit the mute yet. I didn't hit the mute fast enough. I think we sold the pillows, right? MyPillow.com. Like really, if you, I'm not just talking about my show. If you do not have the MyPillow pillow yet, I'm not talking about all the other great things. You are completely impervious to marketing and advertising because everything I listen to and support, every radio show, every publication, every personality that I like is selling pillows from Mike Lindell and has a code. So what I'm saying is you need to celebrate that you are not influenced by marketing and ad campaigns and you treat yourself to a MyPillow by using the code Jones. And it is the perfect Father's Day gift. I'm so glad Mallory brought. By the way, SBA list, the show notes are in the show notes, I'm gonna have a link to their website and to their new ad campaign. They are on the front lines doing the most challenging work. It is all important, right? It's the most important work in the world are those pregnancy centers. The most important work in the world are the sidewalk counselors. And the most important work in the world are the folks that do the really hard work that may not always feel rewarding, and you oftentimes get a stick in the eye, poked in the eye. And those are those organizations like SBA List that are working to get people elected to make sure we get good bills that become laws that go to the Supreme Court. So check out SBA List. I digress from selling pillows. This episode is also being brought to you by Movie to Movement, promoting a culture of life, love, and beauty through the power of film. Go to movietomovement.com. But especially check out our new film. It's not so new anymore, Divided Hearts of America. It is at Amazon. It's wherever you watch movies. You can download it there. I think wherever you buy movies to watch, Divided Hearts of America is there. Please watch our film. Go to movietomovement.com and support us. We're going to be announcing our latest film pretty soon. We have to be prudent and when we announce these things for different reasons. But a film that I've been waiting 15 years to make, we'll be moving into production on soon. Cannot wait to tell you about that. Go to movietomovement.com and please support us. And also the Vulnerable People Project, standing in solidarity with the most vulnerable people in the world, from the child in the womb to the Uyghur and Chinese occupied East Turkestan. Go to thegreatcampaign.org, become a monthly donor, and that way you can stand with us month after month, year after year, shoulder to shoulder, living our lives with the vulnerable to the point of becoming vulnerable. That's the goal. All right? And until next time, sorry for the typically long, typically meandering, not atypical, just typical of the Jason Jones Show. But thanks for listening. Until next time, aloha.
This has been the Jason Jones Show, powered by Mudhouse Media.